All right, I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting, the April 8th, 2020 Policy Committee meeting of the Belton Independent School District Board of Trustees. There's some items here that I need to go over with you before we get into our item 3 that's on our agenda. On March 16, 2020, Governor Greg Abbott granted a request by Attorney General Ken Paxton to temporarily suspend a limited number of open meetings laws to the extent necessary to allow telephonic or video conference meetings in response to the coronavirus. In accordance with those suspended rules, we certify the following. Item number 1, the rest of this meeting has been posted online for at least 72 hours. Number 2, although members of the committee are not gathered in a central physical location, all committee members are in attendance at this meeting by video conference. Item number 3, we are meeting by use of the WebEx software application. Members of the public may listen or view this meeting either by phone or through the live stream provided by WebEx. The phone number and link to the live stream are included on the meeting notice available on the district's website. We apologize in advance for any unforeseen difficulties and ask for your patience as we navigate unprecedented conditions. Item 4, this software application allows for people to view and interact during the meeting. We apologize in advance for any unforeseeable difficulties and ask for your patience as we navigate unprecedented conditions. Item number 5, members of the public will provide instructions on the meeting notice for providing public comment and to read into the record during the public comment portion of the meeting. Those who would like to provide comment at a future meeting conducted by video conference or telephone call should follow instructions on future meeting notices. Item 6, all other meeting procedures will adhere to board adopted procedures to the extent practicable. Item 7, a video recording of this meeting is being made and will be available to the public at a later date. Item 8, questions about the suspended laws should be addressed to the Office of the Attorney General at 888-672-6787 or by email at toma, T-O-M-A, at oag.texas.gov. As noted a moment ago, to comment on an item on the agenda for today's Public Policy Committee meeting, members of the public were instructed to submit their comments to be read into the record. Elizabeth, has anyone signed up or is anyone available to make any comments?
No, sir. No comments were made or submitted.
Okay. Now we're going to go to item 3 on our agenda, going over EIC local. And Dr. Lovesmith, I believe you've got the floor.
Okay, so we are here today to review EIC local and to talk about the impact of it during this time. And so what I really want to do is I've been doing a lot of studying with my team on this, and so I kind of want to talk you through this policy and then how it applies to today's scenario with our students and where we're at with COVID-19, and then possible actions that are going to need to be taken. To start this conversation, just to kind of catch everybody up to this, I wanted to remind everybody of just some key terms, because I want to make sure that as I'm going through it, I'm not talking about things that we haven't kind of established from the beginning. And so first, I'm going to talk about GPA, and that is and I'll refer to it as GPA, but that is the grade point average. It's the cumulative average of all the courses for a student that are identified in this policy. And for the most part, that's in that first paragraph under calculation, where we talk about math beyond algebra, science, social studies, economics, languages other than English, dual credit, AP courses. It does not include any courses outside of those areas. So courses like fine arts, courses like some of our CTE courses, those are not included. When I talk about class rank, because there are going to be two different pieces that are important to this conversation: class rank, and then how we calculate semester average for course credit. And those are two very different things. They can work together. They can also be addressed separately. So class rank is just what it sounds like. It's where we take every single student within a graduating class and we rank them from highest and we rank every single student in terms of where they fall within that class. And it's really important and critical in how we're addressing that, because class rank one is a competition. So you're competing with others in their class for where you fall. It's not just based on your effort alone. And it is used for automatic admission at some colleges like University of Texas, where they look at top 10%. It's often used in scholarships and admissions in general, although when we revised this policy, it was not the number one thing that was used. Colleges do look at individual GPAs. It's also used to determine our honors for graduation. So there's high stakes involved in exactly how this is calculated for valedictorian, salutatorian, and all your top honors. We'll talk about semester average, which is used for a half a credit for the second semester or the first semester, and then final average. And in our current policies, our semesters do not stand alone. We allow the first semester and the second semester to be averaged together to earn a student credit. And that's going to come into play when we talk about how we might handle some things later. So those are just kind of some key definitions to move us forward. I also want to remind everybody just a little bit about this policy. We extensively revised this policy 2 years ago. And we spent 6 months revising this policy, studying other districts. We were looking at what was good for our students. We had 36 administrators, teachers, parents, and students served on that committee. I just want to pause for a second because I'm seeing an email on the screen from Rachel Starnes, and so just want to make sure you're aware of that. So as I'm going through this, we revised this policy extensively. Our current policy was implemented for the 2018-2019 school year. And so this is our 3rd year in this active policy. Now, as we talk through the policy, I'm going to talk about classes. So first, I'd like to start with our seniors. Before I do that, were there any questions about what I've said so far, definitions, policy? None.
No.
Was there one?
No.
Seeing none, then I'm going to talk about seniors. So this current policy is written for our current seniors, their class rank, which again is how their final GPA, the determination of the valedictorian, the salutatorian, and where you fall in the class. This policy is written to be calculated at the end of the 3rd 9 weeks. This policy includes dual credit courses only if the grade is received by May 15. That's going to be critical for us in this state, because now we have colleges and universities that are moving forward with pass fails, and they are probably not going to be providing us with a numerical grade. This policy, as written, protects that practice, because if we do not receive a numerical grade, students are basically held harmless, which means the class, that particular course is just not factored in to their GPA. It won't raise it, it won't lower it, and the policy defends that. And so because of that, we feel like this policy stands strong for our seniors, and we've communicated that their class rank will follow this policy. We feel good about that because the end of the 3rd 9 weeks ended on the last day we were all together in school. And prior to that point, for several weeks, principals at both high schools had been communicating to seniors and to parents, don't forget, the end of the 3rd 9 weeks is used for your class rank. And so we feel like kids were well communicated. Everybody knew the end deadline. We had communicated this as early as 2018-19. And so it's fair. It's fair and equitable, and it doesn't take into account anything going on with the semester. And so for class rank purposes, that decision point can follow this board policy. In terms of final grade for the semester, I'm going to pause on that and talk about it. Kind of want to talk about all the other classes because we'll do the same, but it's independent of the class rank piece. So are there any questions around this policy for seniors? And I would say we would have options, we could modify it, but because it's so solid, we're not proposing that for seniors. Any questions on seniors?
I think I reserve the right to ask questions later.
You can ask questions anytime you want, no problem.
Yeah.
Okay, so then let's go to our next classes. So the next class, so again, I'm going to start with what does the policy currently say and what happened in this policy with our classes of 2021, 2022, and 2023. Those are our juniors, our sophomores, and our freshmen. So for our class of 2021, our juniors, they become the first class where Belton High School and New Tech will be combined. We communicated that again prior to them becoming freshmen, but it's important to remember as we're making decisions and if there's any impact with that, you know, in our current circumstance. So we just want to make sure that this policy did change that for our juniors. It did, however, keep them on their current calculation, which was weighted like so many points for an AP class, so many points for a dual credit. For our class of 2022 and 2023, it moved those two classes to a 7.0 scale. And to be honest with you, whether you're on an added point system or a 7.0 scale, really does not have any impact per se, and how this policy is, how we address it. It's just, I want to remind everyone, when we made the revisions, those were our two big changes. For all three classes, the current policy uses a semester grade from the fall and from the spring for final class rank. And so over the course of 4 years, you would have 8 decision points going into your final rank. You would have the fall and junior years. You would have the fall and the third 9 weeks from your senior year. So there's 8 grades calculating the GPA.
Yeah,
So
can I interrupt real quick, please? Rachel, would you scroll down in the policy just so we can read more? To at least get to that second page. Thank you.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. So in that you can see each of those pieces, but I'm talking about and how we're addressing those classes. And so so now we have to look at what to do with these 3 classes given the circumstances for the spring semester of this particular school year, 1920 school year. The fall semester has already been put into their GPA, and we provide them the ranking within 14 days. That's a piece of the law after the rank to notify them of where they fall, and that has been done. So now we must decide what to do. And so there are, I kind of outlined 3 options. And these 3 options, again, are centered around how to address class rank, not yet to talk about what we might do for grading purposes. And I'll get to those pieces as well. So the decisions points become keep the policy as written to use both semesters, and then use policy EIA, which is at the end of this packet, which basically gives local authority from the superintendent or designee to determine how to get a semester grade. So option 1 would be to keep in the class rank both semesters. Option 2 would be to amend the policy. So that might be where we would say, well, we're not going to use the semester for the spring semester. We're going to use the third 9 weeks. We're gonna amend where we said the endpoint was. And then a third option would be to suspend the policy and to just say, we're going to suspend this policy, or we would maybe put some verbiage in that would say this isn't going to apply at all to this semester will just not count the spring semester, and it will be 7 points going into the GPA for these classes throughout their educational career. So now I'm going to tell you the pros and cons kind of each one. And I want to caveat this with TEA's guidance is that it's up to the local district how to decide this. They're not going to tell you which way you should or shouldn't go. I'm also going to tell you that I am studying every district I can get my hands on as they're releasing them. TEA released some resources on their COVID-19 website, and then we're starting to add districts as my team and I learn what other districts are doing. And one thing I can assure you is that I have yet to find 2 districts who are doing it exactly the same way. And so where we come in with this and how we address, and this is no different than when we originally wrote EIC local. Our EIC local looks very different from any other district. And that's why I believe TAA says it's a local decision, because none of us are coming from the same starting point to begin with. We have to look at this as what is best in our opinions for Belton students and for all Belton kids and all the kids that fall into a class. So with that, I'll go back to the first option. The first option would be that we keep the policy written and locally as it is, use both semesters and factor both in. So the pro in this is that the policy would not need to be amended. We would stay with our original policy as it was written. We would locally design how to calculate this semester, and it would allow us to include any work that was done for the third 9 weeks. And so kids were working really hard up until spring break and they're still working hard now. I don't want to imply that they're not still working, because our kids are still very engaged, but it would allow us to use this semester. And it would give kids the 8 points for their overall GPA instead of 7. The cons of that are that when this policy was written, circumstances. And so it was developed with the intent that a semester would be functioning as it all has, and that all semesters would be equal, and that we'd all be in school and we'd all be attending school, and instruction would be delivered the same, and everyone would have the same opportunity to engage at the same level without some of the variances that we know are going on right now in homes, whether it's internet access, financial situations where folks are losing their job. I mean, there's so many things happening in the dynamics of various homes right now. The second is that the con is that it doesn't allow for as much grading flexibility to meet the needs of all students. And so right now, we have kids engaging in all different levels. We have kids that have great internet access. We've increased our internet access for them to come to our parking lots. We have case managers who are calling students and working independently with them over the phone because they don't have that type of access. We have so many different variables happening within our classrooms to ensure that every kid is learning. And so a con would be holding them all to the same standard when it comes to high stakes class ranking. That's option one. Questions before I go to the next option?
Can I request that we consider the juniors separate from the sophomores and the freshmen? Because is it true that, it's your class rank at the end of your junior year that colleges are looking at? So I wonder if we just need to treat them different than sophomores and freshmen.
So we certainly can. That is an option. That is an option we could talk through the pros or the cons of it. The pros would be that certainly we're addressing juniors. The challenge I think we might have in that would be that freshmen and sophomores are also impacted by this semester that's going to go into a final class ranking that their colleges will look at. And so when you think about how you're going to use the semester, so I certainly think we could, and we can go down it, or I can go down all the options, and then we can start talking by class.
Let's dive into that. Rosie, tell us what you're thinking, just a little bit more.
Yeah.
A little more info there.
Well, so, I do know that junior year makes a big, when there's changes in class rank and I'm speaking from an N of 3. Okay. So when there's changes in class rank, it's all during your junior year. They're pretty neck and neck, freshman and sophomore, but that junior year really separates, and you're talking sometimes thousandths of a point between, place number 3 and place number 4. So, and that's going to colleges, and we're encouraging our kids to be looking all over. I just don't think the impact is equal when we're looking at juniors versus looking at freshmen and sophomore.
So is your ask really based on, hey, let's really think about how this impacts the junior level and then talk about freshmen and sophomores after that? Is that what you're saying? Because it could be that we still do the same thing with freshman and sophomore classes, but I think to your point, that junior class is super important for kids, and we've got to make sure we're doing no harm in that one. Is that what I'm hearing?
That is what I'm saying.
Okay. Sounds great. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, okay. So the first option, keep the policy the same. The second option would be to amend the policy. To amend the policy, we could decide to still count something, but it not be the semester. So one option would be to amend the policy to use the third 9 weeks for class rank. So the positives, that allows students to continue to have 8 grades counting towards their GPA. Another positive to that is it does honor work that students have completed in this third 9 weeks. So we had kids that were from January to March, they're in those classes, they're working hard. It does honor that. So those are the pros. The negatives come in that we never communicated to all students and I can use for this the junior class if we want to focus there first. But we never communicated to those classes that the deadline for competitive class rank. What we communicated was that the semester would be. So you're absolutely right when you talk about juniors, and the competition can be fiercely close. Mm-hmm. And so we have to make sure that we make the decision that is fair to all kids. And so a con in amending that and using that third 9 weeks is that that's not what was communicated to kids. And so we would be after the fact telling them, now your final GPA will be on the third 9 weeks, wherever you happen to land there. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, on that point though, anything that we do is going to have that's going to cause that statement you just made to be true, right? I mean, if we do anything other than use the spring semester grade, we didn't communicate to them in advance because we didn't know this was going to happen.
Well, so yes and no, because we've always told them a semester, but if we make the decision, so let me get to the third option, because then that may kind of clean up some of this. The other option would be to suspend the policy and to not use the semester at all, to just use the first semester. The pro to that is that we always have to use the semester as a communication date. So we're only counting what we've told them was a final date without any of the nuances of this time period. So to not use it would hold any kid harmless from the fourth 9 weeks. And what's happening right now, where the level, the playing field has changed in the fourth 9 weeks for many kids. It does not allow changes in current grading practices to impact students regardless of class rank and final GPA. So if we change our grading practices and we change what's going to be considered, for instance, if we were to go pass fail, if we change what we do grading wise to earn you a credit, whatever we do in this time will not impact your GPA if we choose that third option and we do not, and we suspend this policy for the semester. The con to that is that no work from the third 9 weeks is used in the final GPA. So for juniors, whatever you were told as your class rank in January from your fall semester is now your final GPA.
So can we run math models and can we look at which option is the fairest to the students?
So what I would tell you is, I haven't run the junior class, but what I can tell you is that it depends on what you consider fair, because what we know is with every grade that we put into a GPA, there will be movement. It can move a first person, it can move a valedictorian to a salutatorian, it can move a salutatorian to the third place. And so I can be honest in telling you that you're going to have a different outcome with either one.
So Deanna, I want to jump in real quick because I think this gets to both Rosie's question and Chris's question. So if I look at the policy on the screen right in front of us, and I see where it says graduating class of 2021, and it says in the third and fourth line, the second and third line, that grade averages shall be based on semester grades earned in, and then it lists them. Okay. So I think to Deanna's point in that is that everybody knows and understands that the work that they did in semester one was going to, and what their grades that they received was going to be calculated for their GPA. What they didn't know is that third 9 weeks, that if we decide to cut it off and we went with option 2 that Deanna just laid out there, and we cut it off after the third 9 weeks, there are some students that would probably say to you, hey, I was planning on doing a lot better that last 9 weeks, and I was still working on bringing that up, and my GPA would have been a whole lot better if you'd just given me that amount of time. So I think that back to Deanna's point on this about the semester, in the policy, it says that semester grades. It doesn't say end of year grades, it says semester. So going back to Rosie, to your point about, in your question about what's most fair, we're wrestling with all these things too. And one of the things that is clear in the policy that y'all adopted a couple of years ago is we did say it's semester grades. We didn't say end of the year, and we didn't say end of 9 weeks for our freshmen, sophomores, and juniors. So that fairness question, I think, Chris, it's a really good one, and both of you are right along. This is the exact debate that Deanna and her team and I have been engaging in and talking a little bit about, because it's tough decisions for kids.
It really is a tough decision. And so I have not looked, and I don't want to look at, because I don't want to see kids' names. I don't want to have any, bias in this. What I just know is in watching GPA over time, every grade that goes in, can change the system. It can change it higher, it can change it lower. So we have to decide what to do. So the guidance again from TA has been local decision. So yesterday there was a webinar that Denise Bell, who is actually a part of Region 12, I believe it was a statewide webinar. She was in. She's the kind of the leading expert on some of these types of things, and there were some attorneys and others. Holly Moore from our team was in that webinar. So we followed some guidance that came out of that, and then I personally called Denise Bell today because I wanted to make sure our team had heard correctly what guidance that they were giving. And what guidance they're giving is stay as close to your policy as you can, and do not change it in any, if you can avoid that, stay as close to the last communicated deadline in order to address a fairness or an equity about communication with all students. And so given that kind of guidance and that framework, in this scenario, my recommendation right now and looking at it would be to not count this spring semester in the GPA. And that's hard. That's really hard because I know we would have advocates on either side for their kid. But when I think about the competitiveness and the nature of class rank, and who knew what the deadline would be, who knew what would go in and how it would be calculated, we continue to land on only using that first semester. And so for the life of these 3 classes, not counting the spring semester. And that we were looking at it for all 3 classes. I'm going to say that and let that kind of resonate with you, and then answer any questions. What are your thoughts when you hear that?
I fully trust what you guys have looked at, but I also just know that people look at data, and I don't think you need to put anybody's names in, but I do think that we can run different math models with the different scenarios, and the math model that creates the least difference would give us the data to support our decision. You know, we can't make a decision based on fear that someone's going to be upset, and I'm not saying that's what you're doing.
No.
But I do think that, you know, looking at doing nothing, obviously we know what that, you have that, but looking at whether we cut it off at the 15 weeks or whether we keep the current policy, I think you can tell a different, either there's a statistical difference in those numbers that would support that we should change it, or there's not. And then if people say, well, how did you make that decision? At least you have some numbers to back it.
So that's certainly one way we could look at it. So so certainly could look at that. A couple things just so for clarity, so everyone would know. That would include, and I don't know that would matter, but it would include any student that entered it in the third 9 weeks, and it would include their work from other districts in that third 9 week. I would have to think through that. So we'd want to enter them into the class. So if if the class number has changed between the fall and the third 9 week, just also there would be some variables there. So we could certainly run some scenarios for that. So that shift, I'm just processing that, would be to look at it as numerically what happened in the class over what was communicated to the class from the beginning. We would put more of an emphasis on numerical difference.
I think that's what the kids are doing. And the parents, when you're looking at filling out those applications for your child, it's huge.
Rosie, I'm going to go back to your point for just a moment. Make sure that I understand what you're saying. Are you saying that we look at the data and applying these different scenarios and then figure out under which scenario there would be the least amount of change and then adopt that policy or adopt that change? Is that what you're saying?
Yes. So, you know, if you've got, well, I mean, yes, I am saying that, but I also think that we have to look at the amount of shift that third week, that third 9 weeks created, and you know, so we're talking ends of the curve here at this point. So when you're talking that top end of the curve, and you're talking about a change in class rank that could make a difference in your college application, I don't think that we can deny that data. I think we have to really look and see. Maybe there'd be no shift in the top 5%, since
It would
since
be
the
easy.
offer is that. Maybe there wouldn't be a huge shift, right? But if we get more kids to where so let me reword that. So when we get if we get more kids to where that third 9 weeks and their effort in that third 9 weeks really played huge into their GPA, I don't know how we can say, sorry, COVID hit, that doesn't count. You're working that third 9 weeks. Too bad, so sad. With the level that we make these kids compete, I don't know that we can't look at that data.
How long would it take, Deanna, to compile that information?
So you would have to decide what's the factor that you're looking at to compare. Is it the top 5%? Is it the top 10%? Is it the top quartile? At what place do we let the entire ranking be determined by? Because if it's the top, there's 800 kids in a class, so looking at 80 kids in one semester and 80 kids in the next semester, and looking for movement over two different classes. And what I'm thinking, where would the line be drawn? Would it be looking at the entire 800, or would it be looking at where would you want to draw that line? At 25%?
If you're putting a model into a statistical machine, it doesn't matter if you do all 800 or if you do top 25%. You're just looking at movement.
So you're talking about running a statistical analysis of the data, not just comparing a certain group and counting numerical. You're looking at does it make a difference to which kid?
Mm-hmm.
I'd have to get some experts in statistical analysis to help with that. I haven't seen that approach taken. I've seen, and I don't know if people are running those behind the scenes or not. What I've seen them looking at is not, it's just what, the conversations that I've been in and hearing is mostly, what did you communicate to kids? Not going back retroactive on that if you can avoid it. I just have to.
And that may be the first way to go. I'm just throwing out, sitting here thinking what I might think, especially last year at this time when I had a pretty important
We appreciate that. Thank you for sharing that. We can figure out if we're able to do that or not, and of course, try and think about how we use the right information to make our decisions. So,
yeah. I mean, for what it's worth, Rosie, I mean, I'm sitting here thinking the same thing. I wasn't necessarily thinking about looking at all 800, but if you look at the top 10% and look at what does the movement do in the top 10%, to limit that scope down, because I think that's really, I don't want to say that's where it matters, but I think for the measures we're talking about, right? I mean, that is where it makes a difference. And so the question is, well, what do you compare it to? Right. So what do you use as the base? Is that the class rank at the end of the fall semester? Right. I mean, I guess that's what you would have to use the base group, right?
Yeah, that's what I was trying to think, is I guess you would have to look at what's the average GPA only using the 7 data points. What's the average GPA using the 8 data points? And does it statistically make a difference if there's 7 data points or 8?
Right. At that point, it's a T-score. So either it's significant,
right,
or it's not.
and just to be for me, so I understand, because I'm rather new here as well. Feels like I've been here a long time already, but I'm still rather new. Deanna, do our students know at the end of the semester what their rank is? So at the end of the first semester, we're all juniors and sophomores and freshmen. Were they all notified of what their class rank was after they received those first semester grades?
Yeah, they're supposed to be notified within 14 days after that ranking. And so that's done in January where they're notified that ranking. And then we have gone kind of a step above and beyond and told students in this particular class and beyond, not only what their GPA is now with their current group, but what their GPA is predicted to be when they're merged with New Tech. So right now in our system, Belton High School and New Tech are separate rankings, but we have gone behind the scenes and merged those and communicated that since their freshman year, so there wouldn't be any surprise their senior year.
So in January, the students at New Tech and at Belton High School both knew what their GPA was, what their rank was according to their school, and what their rank was when those two classes would be combined.
And so that was another thing that Denise Bell mentioned to me, and I'd have to look at a calendar, but we would be outside of the window of when we were supposed to notify them of their new class ranking if we use the third 9 weeks. That most people will be if they're using the third 9 weeks. For some districts, they're using the fourth 6 weeks, just depending on how their EIC policy is recommended. For us, she was recommending use that semester only.
So going back to Rosie, to your question on that though, my point in asking those questions were, if we're really talking about movement, what does everybody know right now? All of those juniors, let's just focus on the junior class. All of those juniors know exactly what their rank is based on the grades that they earned for the semester, what they would be ranked in their current high school, and what they would be ranked with the combination of New Tech and Belton High School. So the change, we will see more of a change when we run the 9 weeks. I mean, there will be some change if we consider the 9 weeks no matter what, right? When we add another data point in, that is going to be the data point that says, hey, yeah, there's been a lot of change based on, or maybe it's just a little bit, but based on those 9 weeks, there is going to be some change.
We know that there's going to be change. So the question becomes, what's the fairest way to handle that? To say, we didn't expect COVID-19, and so we're just going to go with semester grades because that's what our policy said, and that really may be the fairest way. Or was there enough change in that 9 weeks that work needs to, we see enough of a statistic, we do blame statistics a little bit, and we look, and if it's significant, then how do we turn our heads to the work that those kids did? I don't know.
And looking through the policy, it looks like the lowest we have is maybe 15%, right? So the top 15% considered honor graduate. And so maybe that 10% boundary I mentioned, like maybe you got to go down to 15% if you look at the data.
I think that's a tough one. I'm struggling through with my mind about whether or not it's a group of students that you run or it's the whole class that you run. And to Rosie's point about trying to find whether it's statistically significant or not. And so it feels like there could be some students that would be sitting just outside that 15%. So you might want to run the whole class. So that's what I'm struggling through right now, trying to think about what's the best way to handle something like that.
No matter what we do, there's going to be a level of unfairness to a few students or many students. We just don't know at this point. But Rosie, I like your point in that everyone knew, all the students knew that we were going to include this semester. We didn't know how much of the semester we were going to include.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, and of course, we're dealing with unprecedented times here.
Absolutely.
This is something that no one could have ever foreseen. So, I don't know if I'm inclined to move towards, we just include just like we did for the seniors, we're going to do for the seniors based on our policy, include that 9 weeks, and then the chips fall where they may. Instead of trying to, because then we stay in line with, okay, these are unprecedented times. We could have never foreseen something like this. I certainly would have never foreseen something like this in my lifetime. And because of that, that's probably the best thing that we can do, as opposed to, doing analysis and figuring out which data points we're going to pick up. Because there's going to be someone that's going to be impacted significantly by that. So I'm not sure that I'm more inclined to say, look, this was our policy. We're going to, just like we did for the seniors, we're going to include those 9 weeks, and then we just have to move from there. And of course, the students have another year to, or at least another semester and 9 weeks to increase their class ranking. And if it was for some other reason other than this unforeseen situation that we're in, I don't know that I would not consider something else. But I think that's where I'm kind of falling right now as I listen to the comments. Anyone else want to comment on that?
Yes. How about if we? Sorry, Chris, go ahead. I didn't see you were speaking.
It hadn't come out yet. I mean, what I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around at the moment is, how are we actually going to treat and grade the spring semester, right? And which is maybe a different subject, and I'm not sure if that's included in the scope of what we can talk about today or not. But to some extent, in my mind, that might go into how we calculate the GPAs, right? Like, because I don't have a great understanding of how that's happening for this semester. So, yeah. And so we could table that if I've just derailed us and taken us down another path for a minute. But
No, we can go down that path. We can kind of pause on class rank, and we can start to talk about grading for this semester. So just like how EIC for class rank is being handled differently across districts, so is grading for this semester. And it's a wide span of what's going on. And so when you talk about grading, so now we're shifting to not really where I fall in the class. I'm no longer competing with anybody. I myself want to get to the finish line, and the finish line is graduation, and I need course credits, and I have to have something trigger my course credit. So the conference yesterday kind of outlined 4 ways to get there. One, complete semester. And so in a pass-fail, teachers just decide based on everything they know about your progress in the third 9 weeks and what you're doing now and what you're showing, does that meet a passing category for demonstrating knowledge, or what we really like in that is, or an incomplete, because with an incomplete, you actually, TEA is allowing students to have until the hard deadline, I think is August, sometime in August, and we could determine that locally to catch kids up with an incomplete. So the positive about that system is, given all of the different variables that are happening right now, the internet connectivity, kids working, taking care of younger kids, kids that it's stressful, and it eliminates the fighting or the competing, I should say, of a numerical system. And it just says, learn, it's for the sake of learning. And I do want to say this, there was an article on the National Times about this, because there's many districts and universities that are going this route. And there's, again, you're going to have people that like it or don't. The con is that we're so ingrained in a numerical grading system that sometimes for folks, it's a harder shift. But it allows a lot of flexibility with kids, especially those that we need to get, we want to help earn a course credit. Next,
can I interrupt you real quick? Rachel, will you please scroll down so that the audience members can see the last page of that packet, which is EIA local, which talks about grades.
Right.
There we go. And that, Chris, this is, to your point, this is the part that we're referencing right now. I just wanted to make sure we were projecting the right document.
Yeah, and my point for even taking us down this path is a decision that gets made here. It might actually make the GPA conversation moot, right? So, yeah, I don't know.
Okay, so the second option is assign grading during this continuity time period following the rules of your current grading policy. So you keep your major grades, your minor grades, your number of assignments. You kind of decide what you'll do with those, but you're going to keep grading. A third option would be some sort of combination of grading with work completed before closure and the continuity period. So I've seen some districts choose this option, and they're saying things like the third 9 weeks will count for 75%. The fourth 9 weeks will count as 25. We'll average those together. I've seen districts that are coming up with multiple scenarios, like the fourth this time can only bring up your grade. It can't lower your grade. And so there's all different options kind of within that level of system. And then there's option where you just decide one grade represents the semester, which includes all spring marking periods. So you could say the third 9 weeks is the grade or whatever you want to kind of design as that. When with our team and looking at this and looking and studying other districts. And I can just to kind of give you a little bit of the landscape of what's going on. Bryan ISD is creating a system where they take the better of the fourth, they're on a 6 weeks. So the fourth 6 weeks or the fifth. So it would be the better of the third 9 week or the fourth. Fort Worth is doing a pass fail. And they are ending their first semester using for class ranking purposes. Gunter ISD is taking grades through the end of the fourth 9 weeks using a higher of third or higher of fourth. Laredo, they are taking grades through the end of their fourth 9 weeks and modifying percentages. So if you're in an online curriculum, you'll have this certain calculation. If you're in the print curriculum, you have a different calculation. Northside, they haven't really addressed their calculations yet. They've provided some guidelines. Round Rock is doing a pass fail. Northside is, or not Northside, Lago Vista, they are implementing pass fail using their class rank from the third 9 weeks, the average of the third and the fourth 9 weeks. And the fourth, so Lago Vista, they're going to do a pass fail. Every pass in the fourth 9 weeks gets 100. So if you pass, if you're considered passing, you get 100. 100 will be averaged with your third 9 weeks. That's just what they're doing. San Saba is providing, they haven't addressed their grading. They've provided some grading guidelines yet, the grading like, one assignment a week. But they haven't addressed calculations. Leander has adopted a pass fail for the final grade. Class rank will not use this semester. Georgetown is going to use their class rank at the end of the third 9 weeks. That's what their board passed. When I last spoke with them, they're going to possibly review that decision again. Tomball will use a semester grade, third or fourth 9 weeks, whichever is higher. Round Rock is going to use a pass or fail for incomplete on their transcripts. And I think in that Midway, I talked with them, and they are only, my understanding was they're looking at, I don't know that they've made any final decisions, but I think they're wrestling with just using the first semester. Temple, they're on a 6 weeks. They're looking at including their fourth 6 weeks. So it's everywhere.
So here's the only part that I'll kind of weigh in heavily on this. And in EIA local, the board has granted the authority to the superintendent to make grading decisions on things. Here's my guidance on this one and what's guiding me through some of these decisions and my piece that I feel like we need to be tight on. I feel like these last 9 weeks are unprecedented, just like you all said. The impact, I don't think we have felt yet here in Bell County, to be honest. I have a feeling that this idea of grading might become more and more challenging as we move through the next few weeks. What we know right now with facts about our COVID-19 cases is that we are increasing in number of cases in Bell County. It's only a matter of time, if it hasn't happened already, before we will have either teachers or students or family members that are impacted by this. So I think of these students, when we talk about each and every student in our system, I think of these student who is impacted by COVID-19, maybe with a parent that ends up with it in Belton ISD. That student, then if we are saying we are taking grades that matter in your calculation right now, I think we are putting them in a really unfair situation, because we have never seen anything like this in our system. And I think we've got to be really careful. I fully admit and I support the idea of local control of all of this. I applaud TEA for not weighing in too heavy. I applaud our local districts for taking their stance and what they believe is best for their kids. For some districts, I think that is assigning grades. I am very concerned about assigning a grade for work in the next 3 weeks that I have no idea how a student might really be able to do that work, and then what that might do to that student in the long run. I feel like I want them to engage in learning opportunities that deepen their learning and that focus on mental health, safety, support for them and their family as we all navigate this time, but that they're still learning. And I really, really do worry about getting to a point where we are assigning a grade that really, we have no idea, based on how this is going to spread throughout our community. We have no idea what it's going to do to support kids. I just want to make sure I made that point in this.
Yeah.
I'm really, that's one of the tough parts for us, is we really don't know the impact on kids.
Right. And so I think what I heard, I'm going to put words in your mouth for a second. I think what I heard was a leaning towards pass fail, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I've tried to be pretty open about that one.
So,
And so, oh, go ahead.
well, I was just gonna say, because I do want you to know this, because I haven't said it yet. We had I pulled 15 teachers together in a committee from representatives from every school at the secondary level, and we talked through all the nuances of current kids, levels of engagement, pressures with grading, pressures with them on assigning grades that are fair and equitable. And they are proposing that we fail system as well.
Okay, so let's just play this forward then. So let's just assume for a second we went pass fail. Now we go back to the GPA conversation, right? So pass fail doesn't get included in GPA, right?
That is correct.
And so now the best we can do, we went pass fail, is basically use the fall GPA and use the 7 points to calculate the GPA, right?
Correct.
So
Why can't we use the fall and then the first 9 weeks? And
because you're not getting a grade. You're either getting a pass or a fail.
no, cut it at 9 weeks and do pass fail for the fourth 9 weeks.
Okay,
Yeah,
so let me answer that just from a statistical, or just from a programmatic piece. So if we turn the fourth 9 weeks into a pass fail, we are, and I actually want to rephrase that. I'd like to turn it into a pass incomplete.
Okay.
We wouldn't make a failure determination until August, because we can give kids that extension. So I want to shift my own language with pass or incomplete. If we do that for the fourth 9 weeks, in order to turn on credit, we have to do that for the semester. And I will just be upfront. I do not like, I understand some other districts have chosen it was best for them. It's really, I don't want to be inconsistent. It's a pass fail or pass incomplete, but let me turn that into a numerical grade to still get a numerical grade for the semester. I don't feel like you can do that. So I think you do then end up turning the semester grade into a pass incomplete. And we can do that in our system. and it allows, so then what would happen on a transcript is it would show, just like colleges are going to show on their transcripts, a pass, a P. Ultimately, when the transcript's finalized, you'll see a P or an F, because you can't leave an incomplete forever. And if you see an F, then we put you in a credit recovery course after August, which is what we do if you have below a 70 anyway. So it does turn the semester into a pass or an incomplete. There are, and so I just want to address this because you may have already heard in some conversations. When colleges are going to look at that, the people that look at it right now is the NCAA, and they look at it only from eligibility standpoint. And we believe, and we've been talking with them, that they are not going to, that they're going to amend their own policy to not use the way they calculate a P or an F with the lowest grade you give, because they're seeing the national concern. The wording we got today from them received was that they are looking at how to revise their policy to address this nationally, since so many school districts are going to be using this pass incomplete option. So I can talk more about that, but just feel the need to kind of interject that.
So does it become again then two different conversations? I understand the passing complete, and I'm fully in support of that. I guess I still struggle with the junior that has put their heart all the way through that third 9 weeks, and we're not looking at that data. But I could be way off base, and you're welcome to tell me that I am. Really, I would be okay with that.
What I'm going to tell you, because again, I hear you, and I can hear the voices out there right now, and there's going to be people on either side of that. There are, because of their own individual kid. I already know of parents that are really passionate on either side of that decision. What I go back to is the advice we've been given, which is stay as close to your policy as you can stay. Whatever we feel that looks like. And
Angela, can I have you weigh in on that a little bit? I don't want to put you in a bad spot, so feel free to say no. But I assume that based from a legal mindset, that when we're given the advice to stay as close to the policy as possible, the concern is when we start varying from the policy, and we do that at the last minute, the implications that may have in the future for others. Am I right on that? Oh, you're muted. Sorry, Angela.
Yeah, you're right. So always we look at policy with trying to make the least changes possible. Anytime we look at revisions, we're always focused on just making the slightest tweak, because you don't know, everything you change has ripple effects. You can't predict what those are. And so when you have a policy, especially like EIC, because we've had to work through it a lot because of new tech and the merging of the campuses, that's always the goal, always to make the least possible changes. And I've seen districts, like Deanna is saying, also I've been watching districts as well, and they're really trying to stick to that. Make the least possible change to the language that you already have.
Rosie, going back to your question though, or your comment, I don't think that at all that you're way off base. This is the exact discussion and things that we've been trying to wrestle through, and honestly why we wanted to have a policy committee meeting. We called y'all last week and said, hey, we'd like to have a policy committee meeting. Policy, and specifically EIC local, is the board's work, and we needed to get your minds and your thoughts on this before we get to a full board discussion. This is the perfect example of how policy committees can work well for us, is bringing administration and board members together to talk through ideas and perspectives. So I appreciate your perspective immensely. And I do think that there are ways we can always try and think through what are the implications if we do this of choice A versus choice B. And then be able to say to you when we do recommend whatever the final decision might be coming up, hopefully that we've checked those data points and we all feel very comfortable about that. So I appreciate you waiting.
Absolutely. So I'm going to, Rachel, if you would go back to EIC local to the first of the 5 pages. And Angela and if everyone, I just want to make sure that I'm stating this correctly because Chris kind of alluded to it. If we used EIA to change our local grading guidelines, and we did in fact turn this spring semester into a pass-fail for the semester, then we actually would not amend EIC local because under calculation or under exclusions, it clearly states courses for which a pass-fail grade are assigned are not included in the policy. So in a way, you follow the policy exactly as it is intact. The only thing you're changing is the grading guidelines. That being said, I would have to weigh we would want to at least put something somewhere that would show for historical purposes why this semester was turned into a pass fail. So I don't know if I just want to make sure I'm interpreting that correctly.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And what I have seen is adding an exception.
Is everyone still there?
Yeah, I can see you. Deanna, can you hear me?
Yeah, we had a little blip in our broadcast there, but
Angela?
it looks like
Yes.
everybody's back.
I can hear you. Can hear me. That's right.
Angela, I can hear you. I think
Yeah. Are you back, Deanna?
It looks like Deanna's having a hard time hearing and stuff. So Angela, you can go ahead and finish your thoughts and we'll go from there.
So my thought is I saw a really good example in Plano where they just added a section to EIC that just addressed this particular issue and just particular to the spring semester 2020. And like Deanna said, that may be a really smart thing to do just so we all remember where we were and why we did things rather than, if it's not changed at all, putting together some other pieces.
No, Manuel, were you able? I looked like you were going to talk.
I heard it. I heard everything Angela said. Is Deanna still with us?
She's on. I can't tell whether she can hear us or not at this point.
Angela, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I don't see Chris anymore.
I don't see Chris in there.
Yeah, he's on, but it looks like he's having we have some he might have some internet connection issues.
Yeah, something's going on. Angela, you're the only one I see on my screen. Wow.
So it looks like, just so Manuel, it looks like we've got Chris.
Okay.
I have Deanna calling me right now. Yes, ma'am.
You see Connie now.
Okay. We have Deanna cannot see or hear anybody at this point. We'll just go continue, and I can take some notes and we'll make adjustments from an administrative team and talk about next steps.
don't know where that left us, but after I finished saying we would need to amend the policy, all of you went away.
Well, you missed me telling everybody you were right.
Okay, well that's good to hear. I just was like, I don't hear anything. I don't see anybody.
Yeah, you're right. We wouldn't have to, but I was just mentioning that some districts have just added a paragraph that's particular to the spring semester of 2020,
Mhm.
which we could always do too.
I would feel comfortable having that just as I mean, I don't know that any of us will ever forget this semester, but just as an official documentation that they were reported for that semester.
So Rosie, Emmanuel, and hopefully Chris will be able to participate here. Is we're drafting up final recommendations and things to bring to the April 20th board meeting. What kind of things would you like us to consider or be prepared for as we gather that information?
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, I can hear you.
Okay. I just want to just relay a couple of thoughts. One is, and Deanna, you and Matt may need to speak to this again, but my inclination is, well, first of all, going back to the data points that Rosie was talking about, and then analyzing the data. It seems to me that if we go that route, we're going to be focused either on the top 5%, the top 2%, the top 10%, or top 15%. And I don't know that I have a level of comfort with that, excluding the top 25%, for example. So I'm not sure that I want to go that route. I am more inclined to include, just as in this situation with the seniors, where you include the last 9 weeks or the first 9 weeks of the last semester, and then move towards a pass incomplete for the remainder of the semester, so that the juniors, freshmen, and sophomores can get their credits. Deanna, what do you feel is a problem with doing it that way? And I think you're talking about the 7-point system.
So what I'm hearing you saying is the two are kept separate. So we would amend EIC local to use class rank using a GPA that includes the third 9-week grade instead of the semester. And then for grading purposes and what is on a student's transcript, we would use a pass-fail system. So when it comes to transcripts, all you ever see on a student's transcript is a semester grade. So you'll actually never see that third 9 weeks that you used in the class rank.
I see.
And so that would be one thing to consider. I really think it all kind of, in my mind, and it leads to, are we answering that we want to honor the work that every kid did? I guess, let me rephrase that. How important is it that we told kids the official point that would be used in their GPA? We did not tell kids it would be the third 9 weeks. So we would be retroactive in saying that. And where does that weigh in the decision and the comfort level of moving forward?
Yes.
And it's tough. It's tough.
Is that what are you leaning towards, not including the spring semester at all? Is that what I hear you say?
Well, my heart hurts to not include it, and I definitely hear Rosie's points loud and clear. But I have a hard time calling a winner when nobody knew that was the end of the finished piece, the third 9. And so, this is terrible because I gave this analogy and then somebody said, well, that's not how it is with soccer. I was thinking about like a football game. Like, if you can't finish the game, you don't declare a winner when you stop the game. You hold until everybody can get to that last piece. And I don't know that that's a fair analogy. It just, there are kids and parents that say, but I didn't know my third 9 week was going to be counted. I would have tried harder. I would have gotten this piece in. But I kept thinking I could pull the last 4 9 weeks. It would change. There will be other kids that'll go, but I worked so hard in the third 9 weeks. It should get to count. I mean, it's really hard to balance all those voices. And so I tend to rise to how can we stay as close to a policy as possible with the deadlines the hard deadlines we committed. See, that's why I have no problem with seniors, none whatsoever. But no conversation was being held by the principals to any other class saying, don't forget the third 9 weeks is really important for your GPA.
For the seniors on their transcript, what's the grade that appears at the end of the year?
Their third 9 weeks. It serves as their final GPA.
Okay.
I believe that's accurate. I can't promise that. It may be that the semester, that's probably the GPA. I'm sorry, I answered that wrong. The GPA shows having only used the third 9 weeks. The semester grade is the average of the third and fourth 9 weeks for their semester. So if I have so when we calculate GPA, we run it through that third 9 week. And if I have a 4.0, then that's what's going to show. And then my final grade is going to be whatever the average was of my third and fourth 9 week. But the GPA is not rerun. It's final. It's final with that third 9 week.
Okay. But they do have a numeric grade at the end of the semester.
We have a numeric grade at the end of the semester we've always had a numeric grade. What we know in a pass-fail system or pass and complete is that just in the same way that our teachers implement or input an 85, a 95, a 92 numerical grade, they would input a P or an F. We know that it'll show up on the transcript with a P or an F or an I. I really want to use that I, P or an I. We know the system will take that. We know that we can calculate the GPA and not include this semester. We could also include the third 9 week. It's just a matter of what we put into the formula to calculate.
Now, what if we were to allow students to, on the transcript, they would have the first 9 weeks of the semester to be their numeric grade in the event they receive a pass for the end of the semester? What would be the problem with that?
So that's what Deanna had mentioned earlier. I think that's what a lot of districts are doing.
Yes.
They're taking some kind of a grade, whether it's saying, it's going to be a P for the last 9 weeks, but we're going to carry over whatever average they had at the beginning. Some districts are doing that. Some are averaging the two. They're continuing to take numeric grades, and they're taking the first 9 weeks and the next 9 weeks, and they're combining them together and coming up with a grade. There are a lot of different approaches on that.
Yeah.
One of the challenges, though, is you want to be able to ensure that you're having students continue participating and complete everything accordingly, right? Often grades are associated with that carrot that gets students to complete things. But I think one of the challenges that you have is students might say, I did all this work in the last 9 weeks, and you're still giving me the grade that I had from the first 9 weeks, but I worked harder and I would have raised my GPA. And so those are some of the arguments that I think people are having in this discussion.
Matt, where are you leaning?
I think Rosie had a good point, is being able to say, let's examine data from all parts of this and then make a final recommendation. I think what I would hope is that you all give us some direction as a committee. You say, hey, I want you to examine it from every lens possible, and here are the values. We want to do no harm to our kids, and we want to recognize their work to the maximum extent possible. And I think that's what I've heard from you all in all of this. And I think we can go back and we can run calculations. And if you have trust and faith in that, then we will come and present to you at the next board meeting our final recommendation for the board to consider. Right now, for me, it feels more fair to be able to focus on exactly what our policy says, and that was you use the student GPA that was already calculated that they already know, and you stick to that. And that does meet some of the other requirements. But I will say this, we didn't dive into it like Rosie suggested. And it might be good as an administrative team for us to look at many different things in order to make that final recommendation. And I'm more than comfortable with it.
Well, the more information that we have, I think the more informed we are, I think that would result in a better decision. I mean, as we've always discussed, we want to make an informed decision, not just a sort of a knee-jerk reaction to what's happened in our country and the world, but something where we've actually broken it down and looked at it as carefully as we can, and then come up with some sort of decision that we think impacts the least amount of folks. I don't know how long it would take to compile that information, but it would. I mean, I don't know if we're on a time crunch either. I mean, obviously we're in April. We're having a meeting on the 20th, board meeting on the 20th. I mean, is that something that we can get in front of us sooner than later?
I feel like we could get that by the 20th. I would really like to meet the 20th as a deadline, because right now, living in the unknown, our kids are in the unknown, and that causes angst
Sure.
in kids and parents. And so that I would definitely like to do that. I think from what I'm hearing is we would gather those data points to kind of wrestle with which of those decisions, a semester or the third 9-week, look, what does statistical analysis tell us? And then in the meantime, continue on with our designing of a local grading guide system that would be pass or incomplete. And I definitely feel like we can accomplish all of that. I feel like we can still proceed forward with a pass incomplete for the semester and that semester grade, and then how we handle the class rank just depends on what we need to do with the policy. So if we were so let's just because it's one scenario we haven't talked about, and I just, in terms of policy, if we did adopt that, we amended the policy to use the third 9-week and then use a semester grade, we would be amending the policy in 2 places. We would not only amend it in the calculation component, we would also need to amend the exclusion that says, something along the lines of, while the semester for these classes will receive a pass or fail grade, they will be included based on their third 9 weeks. So I know I don't want to think all this, but just that would be a 2-step move in terms of the policy.
Of course, if the data shows that there's not much of a change or a very, very insignificant change, then that would make it much easier for us
to say, there wasn't a significant change, so we are going to we're going to stay true with our policy. There'll be no amendments. It'll be the first semester, and this semester will not be included as a pass fail. So you do kind of have it down to, what I'm hearing are kind of 2 scenarios, either based on the statistical analysis piece. I'm good with that. I really am. I think this is a very hard decision for
you mentioned it early on, in that you would not want to look at names, and I wouldn't want to look at names myself. So I think that when we analyze the data, we need to look at numbers only as much as we can, if we can do that. So
we can actually put, I am not the statistical analysis ST, the system. I know exactly what it is. Dr. Mueller is a guru at statistical analysis. Matt maybe, I don't know that about him or not, but I know Mueller is. And I do feel confident that we could put the container of GPAs in a system and cross it. I would just need to work with Mueller. It would be, I truly believe we could analyze the data without names. I think it would be critical to do
I
it.
want to be really clear, Manuel, and I think this was your point, is that our job in this, and this is why I think this policy committee is so powerful. Your guidance today helps us give the board as a whole the right recommendation for you to all feel comfortable talking about coming up. And so by you being able to weigh in and say, hey, have you thought about it this way? It gives you the ability to feel good about the process. So what we wouldn't do to you all is give you any kind of information with names attached and stuff like that. What we do from you all is we get the process down and the key points that you feel you want us to take a look at. And then we present to you a final recommendation that considers all of that. And it takes you out of the administrative process and really policy that is based on the administration's best recommendation with your guidance along the way. So that's why I think this policy committee serves this topic extremely well for our community right
Now, Deanna, can you speak on this? You mentioned it a moment ago. If we were to go to the pass incomplete part of the last semester, I want to feel rest assured that it's not going to affect these juniors and any of these kids when they start to matriculate into college. When the college looks at a transcript, that's not going to be an issue for them.
So I have to first start with I never know what fully a college admissions department is looking at, but what I do know is that the line of thinking in terms of a pass or incomplete falls in the direction that colleges and universities have done. And we would not be alone, or our kids in these classes are not alone in that, in what that, in that landscape of other students. When we studied EIC and we looked at the latest report from college admissions in 2017, what we learned then was that they look at an unweighted GPA. We're going to have that. We're going to have a GPA. We just got to decide if it's the semester or the 9-week, but we will have a GPA. They look at that. They look at the rigor of the courses and the coursework, and then they look at that student overall. And so they're going to see that kids were in advanced placement classes or dual credit classes or CT classes. They'll see those on that transcript. And so because we're not alone in this or in this time period, I would say I'm not worried about a negative impact. We have, and I want to go back, and now that we're really talking about pass and complete, I really want to make sure I really address the NCAA, because I've heard a little bit of unrest about that from a few folks. Brian Cope is the expert in our district who knows the implications of NCAA. What he and I've talked about is that when a course is reported as a pass, NCAA, they assign an A 4 points on when they're looking for eligibility. You must have a 2.3 average over like these 16 classes they look at to be eligible to play. It's just eligibility only. And so they assign an A of 4, a B of 3, a C of 2, and a D of 1. In our case with a pass fail, their current policy is they assign a P to the lowest grade that you have. For us, that's a C. So kids would be by default assigned a 2.0. Now, we believe NCAA is going to change that. They've pretty much communicated that we know that in this landscape right now, that's not working with what has happened nationally. We're reviewing it. We expect an answer from them in the next 2 weeks. Is kind of what we're thinking. But when I talked to Brian about that, he said he has looked at kids over time, and he does not believe for eligibility purposes this is going to hurt a top kid, really that high performing kid, and it's not going, but it might actually in some ways help a kid that's struggling and trying to get eligibility. And so we feel comfortable that that's not going to impact kids. And when we've talked with other districts, you know, you've got Fort Worth's doing this, Leander, Round Rock, you know, we're all in the same playing field when it comes to our kids competing for colleges and NCAA and all those different things.
Okay. I do, as that's another variable that I want to make sure that we address is
Absolutely.
whether that's going to impact in any manner whatsoever a kid's ability for admission into a particular school, not necessarily play sports, but just admissibility in general. Whether it be sports or academically, I just want to make sure that the decision we make is going to have a very small impact or no impact on a kid's ability to enter college.
Manuel, one of the good things about this is that IA local, we don't have to amend at all.
Right.
So we are able to make that determination as an administrative team and communicate that out. And if we get guidance back from NCAA that looks like something is going to harm students in all of this, we have the ability again to make a change. I agree with Deanna. I don't think that's going to happen. I do think NCAA, it's not just in Texas, it's all over the nation right now that people are going to pass fail. And I think the NCAA is going to have to change their policy. Now, they're not on our timeline. I'll fully admit that, but I do think that they're going to have to change their policy in this. But if it comes down to we are concerned about it negatively impacting students, again, we could make an administrative change. We could say, one of those letter grades equals a numeric grade and put that numeric grade on the transcript at that point. So there's options for us to work through administratively that I feel comfortable.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that was the thinking behind Lago Vista. And at first you're like, well, they're going to assign every P a 100. Well, let me just tell you, when the semester grade is not what's used for class ranking, it slightly becomes irrelevant as to what it is. And so by using that 100, they're almost artificially raising everybody's semester average, but it doesn't impact for competitive purposes. And so that's one way. I mean, there's many ways we can get there, but I do agree with Matt. At the end of the day, we will find those answers to, our goal is to address the needs of every kid in the best way that we can in this time.
Okay.
And in future, and in future impacts.
Is Rosie still with us?
I still here.
Listening. I'm good.
Okay, I didn't see on my screen, Rosie, so I can see. Well, Chris is there. Okay.
I think Chris wanted to say something a minute ago. Chris, were you trying to jump in?
I was just going to ask, do we have the ability to put a comment on a transcript? And so could we put a standing comment for anybody that got, that is how we as a district handled, 2020, right? And, and do the best that we can do to make sure the kid gets the benefit of the doubt, right? Yeah.
I could certainly research like what would that might look like.
Right.
We'll explore that. Thanks, Chris.
Rosie, you have any other comments about all this?
No, I just appreciate everybody joining in and throwing ideas out there, because I know we want what's best for our kids. And it's true that this is, we're in uncharted waters, but, some kids are a little bit deeper in right now and it's impacting their life a little bit differently. And I just want to make sure that we're honoring where everybody is. So I do appreciate you being willing to run the numbers.
That's a great point that you made, Rosie. We expanded on it, and but I think that pointed us in the right direction. It certainly made me feel better. Anyone else have any comments?
I have a quick question for y'all before you wrap up, Manuel. As you're wrapping up, I just wanted to ask you all about functionality of this. We are getting ready to go into another board meeting on the 20th, and Angela, I think I can ask about the functionality of our platform right now. Did it work for them, right? Get a little feedback.
I think so. That'd be good.
So, board member perspectives, tell us a little bit about how this worked and how it didn't. We're trying to figure out what the best format is going to be for our entire board meeting coming up here on the 20th. And so give us some feedback here.
Yeah. So I'll jump in here first. So I actually use WebEx all day, every day for the last 2.5 weeks. So there's probably some tricks I can probably share. I mean, right now I've got you all tiled on the screen so I can see everybody's face at the same time, right? And so from a board meeting standpoint, I think it would be great, you know, for whatever the tool is, but if it's WebEx, right, to that functionality I think is really important. So yeah, I'm used to it. I'm good with it. You know, again, if we've got some folks with some discomfort, maybe I could do a lesson or two if we're going forward.
Great, thank you. Rosie, Manuel, any feedback for us on format and how this might work for an upcoming board meeting?
Fine. Look how things went. I might ask Chris how to get everybody on the screen. Nice.
I'll probably have some questions to ask somebody like Chris that's a whiz at this, but the problems I'm having on this end are probably personal. It seems to be working fine though.
Yeah, we call it errors. Problem in chair, not a computer.
Well, if you
Might
have
want a feature of if you mysteriously disappear, who do you call? Because it was a little awkward to call Matt during the meeting, like, I'm not there anymore, Matt. Could you answer the phone?
Yeah.
figuring it out together, and I appreciate
It was just awkward on my end. Sorry.
I appreciate the feedback. Manuel, Rosie, Chris, if you have other ideas, please let Connie know and all of this, and we'll keep tweaking stuff to get it working great for our board meeting coming up.
All right, so no additional questions, comments, concerns? All right, folks, you guys be safe, and I will see you, I guess, what is it, 20th? April 20th? Okay, we stand adjourned.
You.